Hello, everybody. Welcome to the launch of the Bonsucro Production Standard. Thank you very much for patience. All the participants are muted at the moment. If you would like to ask us a question, please use a question and answer function in the chat provided, and we'll be getting to them either live or directly answering in the chat box. With this, I'll hand over to Danielle to give a short introduction.
Thanks, Noel. Good day, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. I'm Danielle Morley. I'm the Chief Executive at Bonsucro, and I'm speaking to you today from my home in London. I hope you're all very well and keeping safe through these last very difficult weeks. So thank you very much for joining us today for this hour. It's a milestone for us in Bonsucro as we're launching the public consultation for our new production standard for sustainable sugarcane. As you know, Bonsucro strives for continuous improvement, and as such, we ourselves and our community are in a process of continual learning, innovating and reflecting to make sure that we continue to do the right things. The production standard forms the very core of the Bonsucro strategy because it sets out a definition of what sustainable sugarcane production should look like, and it provides us with a comprehensive metric tool for sustainable farming and milling. We know that our standard is already having a very positive impact around the world, but it's time for an upgrade because the last revision was in 2014 and we need to remain relevant into the future, taking into account all the emerging challenges and solutions that are coming on stream. So after months and months of hard work and discussions and commitments from my team and committed stakeholders and our expert working group, we have a new draft Bonsucro Production Standard. And we will be taking you through the introduction to that today. I just wanted to mention that Bonsucro is a member of the ISEAL Alliance for Sustainability Standards. And as such, we must adhere to the ISEAL Code and credibility principles. So how we revise our standards are managed in accordance with that framework, and this consultation process, this public consultation, is a very important piece of that. So today we are going to be introducing you all to how we'll be running the consultations over the coming weeks and months, and an overview of the main changes that you can expect. I'm joined today by Pat Brenchley. He's from RCL Foods Sugar Division in South Africa, and he has been the chair of our standard revision working group. And he'll be followed by Noel Tunon, who is our standards manager, who's been coordinating and managing the standard revision for Bonsucro. I'm sure everybody's familiar by now with the Zoom platform, and we will be using the Q&A function, which you'll see at the bottom of your screens for any questions that you might have. Thank you and enjoy the webinar.
Thank you very much, Danielle. I'd like to introduce Pat I'd like to welcome Pat to give a little bit of an oversight from the working group's point of view.
Hello, everyone. It's Pat Brenchley here from South Africa. Good to be here with you today. So I was asked to say a few words around what the working group got up to and our thinking in terms of the main changes that we've brought about in the standard. And you can see who the working group is at that URL that we've got down the bottom there. And Noel will also go through it a little bit in his session as well. Thanks, Noel. If you can, yeah. Right, so I thought let's set the context a little bit about Bonsucro. Bonsucro, as you know, is a global multi-stakeholder non-profit organization. And it's about promoting sustainable sugarcane production, the processing thereof and the trade thereof around the world. It's a community-based, a membership-based organization in over 40 countries. And as our guests are this morning or today, they're from the sugarcane supply chain, including farmers, millers, traders, buyers, and support organizations. Next one, Noel. So Bonsucro's vision is a sugarcane sector with thriving sustainable producer communities and resilient assured supply chains. And the mission is to ensure that responsible sugarcane production creates lasting value for the people, the communities, the businesses, the economies, and the ecosystems in all cane growing origins. And Bonsucro's strategy builds a platform to accelerate change for the largest agricultural commodity in the world, which is sugarcane. So we use this as really our framework in the working group. Next, Noel. So just a little bit of context. So if we were to look at the vision again and unpack this, a sugarcane sector with thriving, sustainable producer communities and resilient, assured supply chains. Next. Right, so the mission to ensure that responsible sugarcane production creates lasting value for the people, communities, businesses, and economies and ecosystems means that, we weren't going to turn our back at all on certification. Indeed, it's the cornerstone of what Bonsucro does. But we were wanting to introduce a landscape level approach to the standard. Typically, you'd find water, biodiversity, and human rights at the landscape level. What that means is that we had to introduce another concept, which is the whole mill supply area, which means the area under certification, or the unit of certification, those farms obviously are certified. But what about the farms that lie outside of that area? So there are some indicators that we feel that should be included when a mill looks at embarking on the Bonsucro journey. Next, Noel. The platform. This is to accelerate change, and we have the Bonsucro calculator. And Bonsucro, as from the start, in the days of the BSI, wanted to gather metrics and be metric based. In other words, looking at impacts. And in terms of this, upfront was a sustainability policy. We've introduced the sustainability policy in Principle 1, and we've introduced management systems approach, as you'll see if you have had a look at the document before this meeting. And then obviously with the calculator, we intend gathering even more metrics going forward. Next, Noel. So two sort of major elements are the risk management, the human rights, the labor rights and occupational safety and health, which I'm covering in this slide. Here, Principle 1 has been really changed. It used to be obey the law. We feel that it can go way beyond just simply obeying the law. And as I said, sustainability policy has been introduced there. You know, if you don't have a sustainability policy and you're not taking a view on where you're wanting to go, how do you answer the following questions, which are, you know, who are we? What do we do? Why do we do it? And where are we headed? And why are we headed in that direction, and how we're going to get there? So that's what really drives the management system approach that we've introduced. And next in there is the risk and impact assessment that includes three important areas: a business context analysis, a social and environmental risk analysis, which everyone's used to, identification of impacts on the human rights of workers and environment and communities. So if we just to dwell on the business context, for instance, the photograph on the left-hand side there you'll see is a photograph I took last week of cane cutters about to enter a field. And we had to think long and hard about what the impact of that would be with the current COVID-19 pandemic. An essential service, but what are the impacts going to be? If people start getting ill, it's going to go beyond simply just your workforce. It's going to go into the communities, and it's going to come from the community. So to extricate or to think of yourself as an island of prosperity in a sea of poverty is not good. You really do need to have a look at where your business is, what you're doing, and how you impact in the greater landscape. Principle 2, major strengthening of the indicators in Principle 2, and the heat stress risks, the work that has been done in Central America has been brought into Principle 2 as well. And Principle 5 is about continuous improvement. And there we've included a number of indicators that provide stretch the mill and the farms that supply the mill. Next, Noel. Right, so obviously I'm an agronomist by trade, and farming systems and inputs are particularly close to my heart. So here we have the three principles that cover these areas really. The principle 1, 2, and 5 pretty much could be generic to other sustainability standards, but principle 3 and 4 and a part of principle 5 is pretty much sugarcane related. And principle 3 has remained largely the same, except that we've brought up indicators that were in principle 5 to bolster especially the climate change indicators in principle 3. So we brought up the energy use indicators, and we've included 3 new indicators, one of them being a climate change plan in principle 3. Principle 4 was a major rethink. We took the environmental impact management plan, which is 4.1.3 in the previous standard, or the current standard, and we split that into 13 indicators. And the environmental impact management plan as one indicator was a monster previously, and I don't think it was really fully addressed and properly understood by many people. And we feel we've now been able to air better or show better what we intend by having these 13 indicators. And they cover typically soil health, carbon, biodiversity, ecosystems, and water. And principle 5, one of the key ones, is research and extension. I mean, how would you even embark on continuous improvement without considering research and especially in the agricultural area, extension? I mean, this is key. And there are many different ways of doing extension. And we think we've covered it well in principle 5. Thanks, Noel. That's all from me, and any I'll be happy to take.
Thank you very much, Pat, for that nice little overview of the changes introduced or the thinking of the working group in introducing this new revised standard. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about mainly answering 3 questions. How was the standard revised? What will the consultation look like? And how can I participate in the consultation? Today we launched our public revision, or yesterday more like, so the documents are currently available on our website. You can have a look. Today I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction of how the process will go to allow everyone to have a look at the documents, and then later during this whole consultation period we can have more conversations in detail around the different changes that Pat very briefly introduced. So before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the scope of the revision. What do you mean when the revision is? What is it exactly that we're revising? So those familiar with the Bonsucro standard know that there's a number of satellite documents that revolve around the application of the standard. These are the guidance to the production standard, the Bonsucro calculator, and the certification protocol. All of those documents will be revised in a later date to reflect the changes that are made on the production standard. So during this period, we are just looking for consulting our stakeholders and our members and implementers on what is the production standard. And on a later date, once we have much more of an agreement on these, we will then make the changes to the guidance, calculator, and certification protocol. Second important in the scope is that the changes that you will see today in the production standard do not affect the Bonsucro smallholder standard. The smallholder standard, we consider it as an adaptation of the production standard for smallholder farmers who carries its own standard revision process and will be updated after the process of the production standard revision. Finally, in the document in the standard, you will see that there is a principle, or principle 6 of EU RED compliance is no longer present. This doesn't mean that it went away. It just means that because the requirements are set by the European Union, Bonsucro cannot consult its members on the applicability. We just have to apply the principles of the European Union. The European Union is also now updating its own requirements, the EU RED 2, and once they become available, Bonsucro will automatically adapt its standard again in order to comply with these, still maintaining it as an optional add-on to the main Bonsucro Production Standard. Okay, so how did Bonsucro and the working group revise its standard? So the process started about a year ago, just after the last Bonsucro week in Thailand, where the board formally launched the revision of the production standard. During this, Bonsucro consulted with the stakeholders, with some of you present as well, also answered a pre-consultation survey. This survey aimed to get our ideas from our stakeholders into what are the areas that needed strengthening in the standards and things that were missing. After this survey was completed, our technical advisory board define the scope of the revision, or what are the objectives of the standard, what is it that we wanted to achieve, and to really try and focus the revision along certain lines. Once we had those objectives set, Bonsucro went around commissioning a working group to implement the changes, the objectives of the changes, and seeing them into the draft standard. And we'll talk a little bit later about who the working group are and what role they played. So, and from July up until this date, we were in the standard development phase, which was the working group were implementing the changes and seeing the changes into the working group. This also period had a lot of stakeholder input. We hold in-person meetings in all parts around the world, or webinars, in order to gain stakeholder insights into how we were progressing with the application of the standard. This brings us to the period we are today, in May to 31st of July, which is the public consultation phase. So for the next 10 weeks, we'll be consulting all of our stakeholders into how we've adopted those changes and what are some of the views of the stakeholders into what to be strengthened, as we still have to develop a second draft standard, and then finally a third draft standard, which will be hopefully adopted by our governance bodies. As I mentioned, there is our documents are currently, all the standard revision documents are currently available online. You will find 3 documents. The first draft of the production standard, which is available in English today and will be Spanish and Portuguese very shortly. Also a summary of changes as well, which is also available today in English, but will be shortly available in Spanish and Portuguese. And finally, an online consultation survey. It's a Word document that you download from our website to fill in and to provide your feedback. Once all of the comments were received, or all the comments received during the public consultation phase will be gathered by Bonsucro and will be anonymized and published on our website, so everyone can see all of the comments of other stakeholders. The working group will provide responses to all of your comments, saying how it's if they've been accepted and where they've been accepted, and how we've adapted the standard into taking into consideration your comments. With those comments, we'll form a second draft standard, and again we will publish the standard back in November. In November, and there we will also start to see, also for public consultation, is the guidance and the calculator that I mentioned earlier. These documents are also essential, as during the second public consultation, we will be having pilot audits to really test on the ground how applicable the standard is. Again, all of those comments from the second phase will also be available online, and same will the comments relating from the pilot audit as well. All of this will be available to stakeholders to see how the standard has developed and why certain changes were made or amended. I talked a little bit before about the objectives of the standard revision. What is it that we were trying to achieve? There was, as I mentioned, there was 3 inputs that we drew into it. So the priorities identified by the stakeholders, priorities identified by the Bonsucro board to adapt into, to make all of our systems in Bonsucro symbiotic, and finally also fixing known issues in the production standard, as Bonsucro can only amend the standard during changes during revision periods that we do every 5 years roughly. During these 5 years, we accumulate comments from, this indicator's not working as it should, or some other mistakes that we make note, and then during the standard revision we'll be revising. So those are the 3 inputs. And then what the working group or the objectives were, or the main objectives for this revision, can be summarized here. So the technical advisory board asked the working group to implement the 3 top priorities identified by stakeholders during the pre-consultation survey around social areas. This relates to improve the guidance on new forms of forced labor, living conditions for workers. So here's talking about worker accommodation, especially provided by the mills. And finally, look at the implementation of the living wage indicator, which you will see reflected in the standard. On the environmental side, our stakeholders felt that maybe our water requirements needed strengthening, particularly around basin level risk or more ecosystem level risks. And the second point is safeguarding sensitive ecosystem. These are, areas of critical importance. They could be, high conservation value areas, for example, strengthening our requirements around those. And the third one on the environmental is really promoting a climate resilience and seeing how operators can adapt and manage changes resulting from climate change. And other priorities is we wanted to apply critical indicators to the whole supply chain. We know that mills do not operate in a vacuum. We also know that the unit of certification model sometimes is quite restrictive. In some issues, you have to really look behind to the whole supply area in order to really start tackling them. The other one is aligned with other normative documents of Bonsucro. Since the last revision of the Bonsucro Production Standard, there have been changes in the Bonsucro Code of Conduct, so the members code. It's also the grievance mechanism, the chain of custody standard has also been updated, and the smallholder standard was developed. So really it is about making sure that all the systems are consistent within each other, and that all of what we ask in one is related to what we ask in the other. So this is what our main motivations on the objectives. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the question and answer box, and we'll be getting to them throughout the whole presentation. So the working group. As we mentioned, there was a working group that was formed. The working group is made up of 13 members from different parts of the world who have different experiences in either implementing the Bonsucro standard, in auditing capabilities, or experts really in their either social, environmental, or technical fields. We have Robert today, who's also attending the webinar. Thank you very much, Robert. And we also try to have quite a balanced mix of all of the regions, so everyone tries to have a full input or a full view into the consultation process. So the standard consultation process. So what is it that we're going to be doing for this next 10 weeks, and how are we going to be able to receive feedback from our stakeholders? So the main thing is the period. It lasts from the 18th of July to 18th of May, sorry, to the 31st of July. During this period, all stakeholders will be free to make comments, drawing from the summary of changes from the and from the draft standard, and inputting their views into the consultation documents, as I mentioned. The Bonsucro Secretariat is also available at any time if you have any questions, or if you want to talk about one of the changes before submitting a comment, please feel free to do so. Either myself or any one other of the Bonsucro team can help you. And finally, and another report is that we'll be running regular webinars on the different topics or different major amendments to the production standard. These will be every 2 weeks, and we'll be repeating them in a number of languages and in a number of different times, really allowing all of the stakeholders equal opportunity to participate in these webinars. If you're also not able to participate, we will also be recording all of the webinars, and we'll be publishing them on the website We'll be publishing them on the website as well to view afterwards. So here is the webinars that we will be doing for the next couple of weeks. You'll see that they have both a start date and an end date, because during the whole week we'll be running the same webinar over and over again in the different languages and in the different time zones. So if you don't need to attend all of them all of the week, they will have the same material, but do please do the different phases if you would like to attend or are interested into those topics. So the first one we're in today is the launch of the standard and the process for the standard revision, all throughout this week. Next week, we'll start with our next phase, which is changes to the structure of the Bonsucro Production Standard. Here we're going to be talking, what Pat was first mentioning is what indicators and how do the indicators apply to the to the whole area of the supply area of a mill, and also talking a little bit about what Pat called, or Pat termed, the stretch indicator or the continuous improvement indicators, and how Bonsucro is applying those to the main production standard. After that, in the 8th of June until the 19th of June, we'll be running different webinars on changes related to human rights. Here we will talk about, the living wage, the living wage, working hours, discrimination, forced labor, all of those issues that were highlighted, as well what changes we were made. Then starting from the 22nd of June, we'll be talking about health and safety indicators. So here is the indicators that relate to, for example, heat stress, or the indicators that relate to worker accommodation will fall into here as well. And finally, the last phase is the environmental and technical indicators of the production standard. So here is talking about how the changes relate to the environmental impact management plan that's been split into 13 indicators, how that works, and also changes made to the protecting sensitive ecosystem, how that is realized. All of the different webinars will be features both Bonsucro secretariats and different members of the working group, so that they can, so you can get insights onto why those changes and what is it that we were trying to achieve. Everyone will be able to participate. You'll be able to ask questions, and we encourage you to do so. We want them to be quite a conversation style, quite dynamic, in order to really get the full consultation experience. And finally, so for the last 2 weeks, from the 16th of July into the 31st of July, you'll still be able to make comments, and we'll reserve the right to also organize future webinars if we feel that certain issues require more time to talk about, or if there's things that are unclear, we can organize additional sessions during that time as well. So on providing feedback, I wanted to mention a few things. This is the first draft of the production standard. Everything is still up for consultation, even including if there are things you feel are missing, or things that I feel maybe are not quite right, please do provide your comments. This is by no way done the finalized document. This is just the start of the conversation, we feel. During the document, we also would like to help you think about the type of feedback that is quite useful to both the secretariat and to the working group. So in particular, if you can when you read the new revised standard, if you can think, are the requirements included in the standard clear? Do these changes, or do these indicators really add value, or is it maybe it's not, that doesn't add too much value? Maybe they are not necessarily needed, or things are clearly very important and they should be having higher prominence. Another very important part is the standard achievable? There's no use in having indicators there that are not achievable in the by the operator. So we're really looking for that feedback as well. And finally, do the indicators really sufficiently address the salient issues that they are meant to apply? Maybe there are different ways of feedback, and how this can be done more effectively and more efficiently, and would like to hear your feedback on that. So as I mentioned, all of the documents are available from yesterday. You can download them all on our website. This link will be shared with you after the will be shared with you after the revision, after the webinar. You can find them on the website under the Production Standard Revision Public Consultation. Here you will find the 3 different documents: the draft standard, the summary of changes, and the consultation form. The consultation form is a Word document that if you wanted to, if you can input either complete the whole document or only parts of the document. If you feel that's all you wanted to provide comment on, that's fine. You can also submit multiple documents to Bonsucro, and if you can do so via email at info@bonsucro or to myself. This is also clarified on the website, and it's also clarified on the website, and we'll be also sharing the links after this webinar. So yes, just a reminder that the consultation date closes on the 31st of July. So I would like to break for any questions and to answer your questions. If you can use the chat box provided, or if you would like to make your question live, if you can just raise your hand and I can give you access. So there are no questions. Yes, so we have 2 hands raised, or 3 hands raised. I'll get to Ritu first. Hi, Ritu, you're unmuted.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Noel, for this presentation. There was a question that came up yesterday as well, and I was talking to some of our partners in India, is that can we submit the the documents in phases? Like, do we have to fill it all at once and send it, or can we do it in phases?
You can fill out either the whole document, part of the document, submit multiple parts of the document. It's completely fine with us.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So next, Robert, you have your hand raised. If you can unmute you. Oh, sorry. Yeah, Robert, if you can unmute yourself and ask your question.
There you go.
Oh, Robert, you've muted yourself. Robert, you've muted yourself.
Yep. Yeah. Noel, there was a fair bit of interest in Australia as a group in the early consultations. Will we be able to have as a group, a meeting with you or the team?
Yes, so our original plan was to have different consultations all around the different countries, especially the ones that we've already consulted on before. Unfortunately, due to the coronavirus situation, a physical meeting couldn't be possible. So we felt that the best way was to break up into different chunks, into different thematic chunks, to really, to discuss the issues globally, virtually, but also by themes. But if there is interest in organizing an Australia meeting, yes, we can certainly talk about that. No problem at all. I believe we're doing. We had similar requests from other parts of the world, so we can see how that all fits into our timetable. But yes, we can do so.
Thank you.
No problem. So next one, Joshua. If you can unmute yourself and ask your question, please. Hello, Joshua. Hi, Joshua, can you hear me? I've unmuted you. No. Don't think he can. Okay, open comments. Okay. So there's a comment that came through the So there's a comment that came through on the chat box, which is, I've looked at the standard and think very much it's a stretch. You know, thank you for your comment. That's what the consultation period is for. We are here looking to see what is feasible, what's achievable in the short term, especially. And you know, by no means this is a final version of it. We're welcome to all comments and suggestions. Yes, Joshua, I'm not sure if you still have a question to ask. No, okay, it's just your hand was raised. Okay, any other questions? Yep, there's a message here. So Joshua asked his question via the chat box. Will this presentation be available after this session? Yes, we'll be sharing the presentation and the recording. It takes a little bit of time to us to get the recording to be able to send it. So probably in the next day, we'll be able to do that. Good. Okay, another question? Will the standard structure will also be changed or remain the same? So we're remaining the first, same structure as the different principles. What we say the structure of the standard, we relate to the unit of certification. So what in some indicators will apply to the area outside the unit of certification. And also finally, the principle 5, you know, that it's no longer, it won't be, you'll have to a continuous improvement. So you have to, in the year 1, meet only 20% of these indicators. In year 2, meet only 40% of these indicators. And you can select which ones you comply with during the time, during the different years. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, so there's a question on the issue of substantial independent farmers who do not qualify for the smallholder standards, and it's not appropriate to fit in that classification. Yes, these are all comments that we would like to draw from the public consultation phase. You know, what is the role of the large independent farmers, especially in certain indicator which requires you to go outside the supply area, how that managed. See how we've adopted that into the standard, and then please do provide your feedback on how we can do so more successfully. Thank you very much, Paul.
Now, there are some questions in the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
2 of them. The first one is, during the presentation there has been mention of outside the unit of certification. Can you clarify what he means?
Sure. So the current Bonsucro standard, or the version 4, the one currently in use of the production standard, the indicators used to apply to an area that the mill defines as what we call the unit of certification. This is the area that the auditors will visit, and the operators have to apply the principles of the Bonsucro standard. This area is also the one that once they successfully pass the audit, will determine how much Bonsucro certified volumes will be able to achieve. Typically, this can range from either 1% of your whole supply area up to 100% of your whole supply area. It's up to really, it was up to some of the mills to choose, or some of the operators to choose what is the area, or how many, for example, in the terms of in yourself, Joshua, how many farmers you wanted to include in that unit. What we're asking for in this new revised standard is that some indicators, regardless of the size or the area or the amount of farmers that you choose to include into that, some indicators you will have to have a plan to manage the whole supply area. The revision includes standard at the farm level, is it not correct? So again, so the changes introduced here do not affect the smallholder standard. The smallholder, if you're applying the smallholder standard, those are indicators that relate to the agriculture side. Those will still remain unchanged. If you if you are applying the smallholder standard, only the indicators that relate to the mill side are applicable if you're applying the smallholder standard at farm level. Okay.
And there is one last question on the Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
Will the auditor assess the farms who are not within the scope of certification?
Yes, at the moment that is not the plan. There are several different difficulties with auditors accessing areas outside the unit of certification. What we are looking to do is look at how the mill as the main operator is handling risk outside of its supply area, more looking at the processes put in place by the mill itself, rather than the auditors visiting the compliance on the ground. Thank you. Thank you very much, Hassan. Okay, seems to answer all of the questions. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact Bonsucro, myself directly. You can find my email on the website as well. And thank you very much for your time here. We hope that you enjoy the new standard, you like it. And if you have any comments, please feel free. We are actively looking for your comments, and all your suggestions are welcome. Great, and with that, thank you very much, everybody. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, everybody.